It was early, the kind of morning that would blend in with the rest of the week. Still, quiet, and indifferent to the world. The air was crisp, and the city streets still clung to the quiet of the night, barely disturbed by a handful of early risers jogging or walking their dogs. But in a corner of this urban landscape, a moment was unfolding that would change everything. Stanford Harrison, a man in his mid-60s, had always been known for his calculated success. A millionaire entrepreneur, he had the luxury of owning a few penthouses, a few cars, and a reputation that was as spotless as the marble floors of his home. But despite all of that, Stanford had found little peace. He had spent too many years cloistered in boardrooms, sealing deals and shaking hands, often with a quiet ache in his chest that he refused to acknowledge. This morning, though, was different. He didn't have a meeting until later, and so he found himself wandering the park near his office. It was a place he used to pass by quickly, but something about it, the loneliness of the early hours, called to him now. His gray scarf was wrapped loosely around his neck, and his boots clicked softly against the pavement as he walked. The stillness felt different today, like something was waiting for him. He had nearly passed a weather-worn bench when something caught his eye. At first, he assumed it was just a pile of discarded items. Ripped clothes, maybe a forgotten blanket. But as he stepped closer, his breath caught in his throat. There, under the dim streetlight, was a collapsed young teen, barely breathing, huddled against the back of the bench. Her clothes were torn and filthy. Her body slumped as if she had been abandoned there for hours. But it wasn't just her. Beside her, two children huddled close, their faces pale, their bodies wrapped in nothing more than scraps of fabric. Stanford stopped dead in his tracks. His first instinct was to call for help, to retreat back into the safety of his world, to let someone else handle the situation. But something in him rebelled against that urge, something he hadn't felt in years. Maybe it was the shadow of his daughter, Emma, who had died in a car accident 5 years ago. She had been his everything, and since her death, his life had seemed to lose its color. But this moment, this girl, this fragile family, stirred something deep within him. He approached cautiously, kneeling down beside the teen. Her skin was cold to the touch, her breathing shallow. She wasn't dead, but she might as well have been. The babies, too, were barely moving, their tiny hands clenched in an almost unnatural stillness. The girl, barely 12, stared at him with wide, terrified eyes, clutching a small boy to her chest. "Who are you?" Stanford whispered, his voice more to himself than to her. "My sister is. She's just tired," the little girl whispered back, her voice dry and fragile. She's cold." Stanford's heart tightened. He didn't know what to do, but something inside him refused to walk away. "Do you need help?" he asked softly, his fingers trembling as he lifted the girl's chin to check her pulse. It was there, faint but steady. The babies were still alive, but it was clear they needed immediate care. Stanford stood, making his decision in a split second. He could have called the authorities, but he had seen how quickly they moved when it came to people who lived like this, people whose lives seemed invisible to the world. He had no idea who these kids were, where they came from, or what had brought them to this park. But what he did know was that he couldn't leave them here. With one arm, he gently scooped up the teen. With the other, he cradled the two babies, pressing them to his chest as if they were his own. The girl hesitated for a moment, her eyes flicking to her sister, but she finally stood, trailing behind him as they made their way to his car. People in the park watched as he moved past them. No one stopped. No one asked if he needed help. Stanford's mind raced, wondering what they thought of him. They probably thought he was just another rich man, offering nothing but empty gestures, but he couldn't bring himself to care. All that mattered was getting them to safety. Stanford's car was parked nearby. He opened the door and laid the babies gently in the back seat, securing them with blankets. The girl, Alma, climbed into the passenger seat, holding tightly to one of the babies as she pressed her forehead against the window. Stanford turned the heat on full blast and started driving. The house was only a few miles away, but it felt like an eternity. When they arrived, he didn't waste time. He knew exactly what needed to be done. He called his housekeeper, Margot, a woman who had been with him for years. Her eyes widened when she saw him enter with the children. "Stanford, what?" "They're in trouble, Margot. Get me some blankets, warm water, and call Dr. Simmons. We need help now." Margot didn't ask questions. She rushed to the kitchen, and within moments, the house was filled with the sounds of movement. Blankets being spread, bottles being filled, and the steady ticking of the old clock in the hallway. The doctor arrived quickly, and after assessing the children, he nodded. "They're malnourished, but they'll survive," Dr. Simmons said, his tone professional but compassionate. "This one," he pointed to the teen, "will need fluids and some rest." Stanford sat by the fire, his gaze fixed on the girl, who had fallen into a deep sleep on the couch. Alma sat beside her, still holding the baby, her eyes scanning the room cautiously, unsure if she could trust this place, these people. "You did the right thing," Margot said quietly, placing a hand on his shoulder as she stood beside him. Stanford nodded, but he wasn't sure what the right thing was. All he knew was that he had made a choice. When Dr. Simmons left, Margot approached him again. "Stanford," she said softly. "Who are they? Where are they from?" "I don't know," he replied, shaking his head. "But they needed me." The house, once a quiet, empty monument to success, had come alive in a way it hadn't in years. It wasn't the noise that filled the air. It wasn't the movement. It was the possibility. Stanford stayed up late that night, watching over them, a quiet resolve growing within him. He didn't have all the answers. He didn't know what would happen next. But for the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. The warmth in the house wasn't just from the fire. It was from something deeper, something that had been dormant in him for far too long. Resilience wasn't about wealth or status. It was about refusing to let the world walk past when it was too easy to turn away. The next morning, when Stanford woke up, he found Alma sitting by the window, her hands curled around the baby's tiny fingers. "I like it here," she whispered, her voice soft. Stanford smiled, the first genuine smile in a long time. "I'm glad you do," he said. "You're safe here." For the first time, the house didn't feel empty. It felt full of promise, of second chances, of unseen resilience. And it was only just beginning. Where are you watching from? Is it morning, noon, or late at night? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this story of unexpected hope, defiance, and the quiet strength of those who refuse to be forgotten.